Hello and welcome to another preset dive on the Arturia Moog Modular, and this time we have a new sound to go at, and we're just going to dive straight in. Let's not mess around. So we can immediately see that we've got two separate sound sources, as is very often the case with these presets, and as always in my case I'm going to throw half of it away. Okay, now having done all of that, you can tell that the sound is only in the left hand speaker, and that's going to be a bit annoying while we're just listening to it, so we'll just pan it central. That's better. And a quick check to make sure that everything's nice and clean. Save the preset. So we have a 2D pad. The X side of the 2D pad is going into the low pass filter. Note if we go up and down, we have no effect on the sound at all. Only the left X axis is in use on this side of the sound. We've got a modulation wheel plugging into the amplitude modulation of this mixer here, and it's coming out into FM. So what's the input source for this modulation? It's the LFO. So if I, first of all, modulation wheel all the way down, all the way up, make it more dramatic, make it louder. No, sorry, not louder, more intense. That's a poor slip there. Just because this is a knob with volume on, it's not always volume that it's dealing with. Here we're dealing with the amount of modulation that's being applied to a frequency modulation. And you can hear the LFO. Applying that change. So at 3 we're getting that wobble, that flutter effect, and the amount that's modulating the pitch is being controlled by the modulation wheel, which in turn is then feeding in to the frequency modulation jack. So all of those things all plug together to give you this effect where you've got a little bit of it, you turn the modulation wheel up and it becomes much more dramatic. Obviously I've messed with the levels a little, and if we turn the knob, it gets much deeper. So that's the amount by which the frequency of the main driver is being varied. But the LFO itself is controlling the speed. The speed doesn't change. If you wanted to change the speed of the LFO, you'd be dealing with this frequency modulation here. That's a different thing. Okay. So that's the mod wheel. What else have we got? We've got a key follow going up to this low pass filter over here. Now when I did the key follow tutorial, 23 minutes of brain melting insanity, I didn't actually deal with the key follow jacks, but basically it's a variable means of applying key follow to, well, any source. Instead of hardwiring it with these little sockets down here, we're taking an output from K1 and having some effect on the sound. So we've got a little bit of key follow being applied to the tone. If I take this jack away, let's see if we can hear it in either direction. Not that way. Yes, that way. So let's try to figure out why. So our center point is C3, so there's not going to be any change there. Go down to C2. Take the cable away. It gets duller. That's because a negative modulation amount is being applied to that input source, to that modulation source. If I take it away again, in fact, let's just set this to 0. So the key follow is having no effect on the tone at all. Make it positive. So you can see the seesaw effect. When I have positive values, the sound is duller. That's its natural sound. When I have negative values, the tone is sharper. Because ordinarily, key follow below the center point note is going to attenuate an effect, but in this case the modulation wheel is actually, sorry, the modulation source is inverted because we have a negative adjustment to the modulation amount, just to mess with our heads, I think. So that's key follow having a variable effect on a low pass filter. As a matter of interest, we also have K2 plugged into this low pass filter. So this key follow is having an effect on the filter as well. And this is a very steep key follow at 3.06. So again, go back to playing C2, and I'll actually take this K1's follow away. What do you think is going to happen if I turn this, or where K2, I turn this knob down? Okay, much brighter now. There are more high frequencies. Why? Because we've made a very dramatic key follow slope, and K2 is hardwired in, so it's having its maximal effect. So when we take that away, if we go all the way down to 0, that's the natural tone with no key follow applied. And then as we turn the key follow up, because we're playing below C3, the sound gets duller and duller and duller. Okay, that's that. We have an envelope coming into the low pass filter. This is pretty basic stuff at this point. We should know exactly what's going on here. Almost no attack time, 50 milliseconds, very fast, and a 4-second decay on the envelope. So if I turn the filter up a little bit, start messing with the decay time and see what happens. So that's no decay. So what we're hearing is the sustain level, this. It's getting there straight away. Very long decay. It's a very bright sound. The envelope is at its maximum for 12 seconds. It slowly fades away, back down to the sustain level. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're back to the sustain level. We've got 2 slaves feeding into the driver. So they're both sawtooths. They're both at, there's a very slight positive tuning on this sawtooth here, and that matters. Oops. I left clicked and dragged them, which is why it went down in a whole semitone. You have to right click to do your fine control. So that's both sawtooths playing the same tone. A little bit of detune on. It really, really makes a difference. This is 1 octave below. This is also 1 octave below. And you can see that those two slaves are linked together. It doesn't matter that slave 2 is missed out. Maybe there used to be something in during the sound design phase and it was taken away. There's nothing hidden in the invisible fifth square wave oscillator. There is actually no sound coming out of slave 2. That's fine. 1 and 3 are linked together. That's all that matters. And that comes out into here. And that's everything for the left-hand side. Let's go over and have a look at the right-hand side. So again, having cleaned it up, quick save. And we'll pan it center. Okay, so this is a soft pad sound. Now then, we saw earlier that we had key follow being applied. It was key 1 going over to this LPF over here. We got key 2, key follow 2, coming into this LPF over here. And we also saw earlier that key follow 2 is set to a very extreme effect. So I'm mashing away on C3 here and we can't hear anything. That's the natural sound. If I play C2, it's almost inaudible because the key follow is so extreme and we already had a sound that was very deficient in high frequencies. If I bring this down, there's the tone. And that's why it's so dull in these low frequencies, because the key follow is set so extreme. So this is one of these situations where it can be really difficult if you don't understand how key follow works to figure out why this sound is so... You're messing around with all the jacks up here in what you think is the main gubbins of the sound, and there's this weird X factor going on. You know, why does the sound so strange? Always remember that key follow is usually there having some kind of effect. High up, so I'm playing a C4 now. One of those cases where this sound is already so rich that the higher frequencies are very scarcely affected by it. In fact, basically not at all. So this extreme key follow has been applied in order to have that thickening, that fattening of the bass sounds. It's not having much of an effect on coughing fit, excuse me, on the high frequency sounds. We have this time we have the sound controller Y controller operating on the right hand side. Okay, and you can see that the LFO is having the same impact on the frequency modulation as it was on the left hand side. So this little module down here it was feeding over here, it's also feeding into this one, so we've got two outputs doing the same job on both sides. Modulation wheel applying frequency modulation to the tone. So we've got two sawtooths linked together, and again they're both at 0, but just as in the left hand side there's a subtle fine tune, which when we take away, the sound is just less interesting. Those very, very subtle detunes of the two oscillators are a really intrinsic part of what makes the Moog sound and many analog sounds sound rich because of this subtle detuning effect. The envelope is doing the same job over here as it was on the left hand side. Don't need to worry about that. And that's basically it for this sound. So let's bring them both back together. And then we can see that composite effect now. We can visually discriminate between driver 1 feeding into this low pass filter, driver 2 feeding into this low pass filter, but there are controls that are having that synergy effect. So the XY controller, now that we have both sides of the sound, and as I'm moving that joystick, I'm hearing a beautiful stereo effect that you can't appreciate when we were just dealing with one sound at a time and we had them panned central just so that we could hear it in both of our ears. We were failing to appreciate how much richness that XY controller is bringing to the sound by applying a different type of modulation. You know, the X is going to the left hand side, right, Y is going to the right hand side, and you get to play with them both and hear it whoosh around your head. Great stuff. Similarly with the frequency modulation, now we can see both cables going into the FM, and when we move our modulation wheel, it's having the same effect in both ears, so it's not having a jarring effect on our brain where they're oscillating at different rates. That's the beauty of using one output source to go to two destinations. And these two envelopes, is there any difference between the two envelopes? Very, very subtle. Yeah, there's a very subtle difference in the timings of the two envelopes, one going to the left and one going to the right. So this is an excellent example of a stereo patch. That many of the effects, the left and right, are quite similar in many respects, but those subtleties of difference of application, particularly with the key follow, have a great effect. Key follow 1 and 2 going to different LPFs ends up having a pretty impressive effect on the overall sound. See, all your high keys really brash, your low sound absolutely dull. That's what the key follow is doing. So it sounds like a really simple sound, this one, but when you actually get into it and dive under the hood, there's really subtle nuances to it that make you appreciate how much effort the sound designers have put into that complexity. And I'm listening to it on headphones, obviously, and it just sounds absolutely wonderful. That's that for this one. Hope you'll join me next time for another preset deep dive, and I hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.